Breaking news from the Middle East tonight. Tensions between the United States and Iran have reached a dangerous level as military strikes, political threats, and regional instability continue to grow. What started as a series of targeted airstrikes has now turned into a broader conflict that could reshape the balance of power in the region. The United States says its actions are meant to protect its allies and military forces. Iran, however, calls the attacks an act of aggression and warns that it will respond with full force if necessary. Tonight, the world is watching closely as two powerful nations move closer to the edge of a larger war. The latest escalation began after a series of airstrikes reportedly carried out by the United States and its allies on Iranian military facilities. Several strategic sites, including missile bases and military command centers, were targeted. Washington claims the strikes were necessary to stop Iran from expanding its military influence and threatening regional security, but Iranian officials strongly rejected that claim. Iran's leadership says the country will defend its sovereignty and will not remain silent in the face of what it calls foreign aggression. In response, Iran has increased its military readiness across the country. Air defense systems have been activated, missile units placed on high alert, and naval forces in the Persian Gulf have intensified patrol operations. Iranian commanders warned that if the conflict continues, American bases and military assets in the region could become potential targets. The Persian Gulf, one of the world's most important energy routes, is now under intense military surveillance. The conflict is already affecting the entire Middle East. Oil prices have surged as investors fear disruption in global energy supplies. Several neighboring countries are preparing for possible escalation, while international airlines have started rerouting flights away from certain areas of the region. Security experts warn that if the conflict spreads, it could pull multiple countries into a wider regional war. The international community is calling for calm. The United Nations has urged both sides to avoid further escalation and return to diplomatic dialogue. European leaders also warned that a war between the United States and Iran could destabilize the global economy and threaten international security. Meanwhile, major world powers are closely monitoring the situation and preparing for possible diplomatic negotiations. For now, the situation remains extremely tense. Both nations continue to send strong messages, but the world hopes diplomacy will prevail before the conflict spirals out of control. The coming days could be critical in determining whether this crisis leads to negotiation or a much larger confrontation. For millions of people across the region and around the world, the hope is simple: peace over war. Another major concern is the potential impact on the global economy. If the conflict between the United States and Iran intensifies, it could disrupt oil shipments through the Strait of Hormuz, one of the most important energy routes in the world. Nearly one-fifth of the world's oil passes through this narrow waterway every day. Any military confrontation in this area could send oil prices soaring and trigger economic instability across global markets. Security analysts are also warning about the possibility of a wider regional conflict. If tensions continue to rise, other countries in the Middle East could become involved either directly or indirectly. Military alliances, regional rivalries, and political interests could quickly turn the current confrontation into a much larger and more dangerous war. For now, global leaders are urging restraint and diplomacy in hopes of preventing a devastating escalation. As tensions continue to rise, diplomatic efforts are also intensifying behind the scenes. Several international leaders are working to bring both the United States and Iran back to the negotiation table. The United Nations and other global organizations have urged both sides to exercise restraint and avoid actions that could lead to a full-scale war. Many analysts believe that diplomacy may still offer a path to de-escalation if both nations are willing to compromise and prioritize regional stability over confrontation.